The gavel cracks and the sound echoes like a gunshot. A man's life hangs in the balance. We trust our courts to be pillars of justice. But what happens when the judge himself is the criminal? What happens when the man in the black robe is a racist, so consumed by hate that he will plant evidence on a black man to secure a conviction? He is about to ruin the wrong man's life because that man is not just a defendant. He is a federal agent and he is recording everything. The air in courtroom 3B of the Davidson County Courthouse was stale, thick with the smell of old wood polish and cheap coffee. It was Judge Harlan Voss's domain, and he ruled it like a bitter king. Voss, a man whose face seemed permanently set in a sneer of mild disappointment, looked down from his elevated bench. His eyes, the color of washed-out denim, scanned the defendant standing before him. The defendant was Devin Stone on the docket. He was a black man in his late 20s, dressed in an orange jumpsuit that did nothing to hide the powerful build of his shoulders. His face was calm, almost unnervingly so. Docket number 719B, the People versus Devin Stone. The clerk droned. Charges are resisting arrest and assault on a peace officer. Not guilty on all charges, Your Honor, Devin said. His voice was deep and steady, devoid of the fear Voss was used to hearing. Voss leaned forward, his spectacles slipping down his nose. Assault on a peace officer, Mr. Stone. A serious charge. Officer Kane claims you broke his hand. Officer Kane slipped on a wet sidewalk while trying to tackle me for fitting a description, Devin stated. I put my hands up and he fell. I never touched him. A likely story, Voss scoffed, ignoring the young public defender, Naomi Fletcher, who was frantically trying to interject. Naomi, barely 3 years out of law school and drowning in an impossible caseload, finally spoke. Your Honor, Mr. Stone has no prior offenses. The assault charge is clearly an overreach. The officer's own partner's report only mentions resisting. We believe Officer Kane embellished his report after the fact. We ask for release on recognizance. Voss gave her a pitiless look. Do you know the conviction rate in my courtroom, Miss Fletcher? It is high. I do not tolerate attacks on law enforcement. He looked back at Devin. This fitting a description. Were you by chance in the vicinity of the Mill Creek robberies? I was walking home from the bus stop, Devin said. That is what they all say, Voss murmured loud enough for the court reporter to catch. He shuffled his papers. He saw a black man. No job listed on the intake form. No permanent address. Transient. Dangerous. In Voss's mind, the case was already closed. I am not letting a potential cop-breaker back on my streets. Bail is set at $100,000. Naomi gasped. Your Honor, for a resisting charge, he cannot possibly. Then he should not assault police officers, Voss snapped. $100,000 cash or bond. Next case. He banged the gavel. As Deputy Harlan, a stocky man with a face like a bulldog, grabbed Devin's arm, Devin looked directly at Judge Voss. He did not look scared. He looked interested. It was a look of pure analytical focus. Voss felt a strange chill. He dismissed it as indignation. The arrogance of these people, he thought. Devin was led from the courtroom into the holding pens. The moment the heavy steel door clanged shut, he sat on the cold bench and closed his eyes. The Devin Stone persona melted away. Special Agent Corbin Hale of the FBI's Public Corruption Unit began his assessment. The initial sting, Operation Gavel, was simple. Send in an undercover operative on a minor manufactured charge to see if the courthouse's bail bond system was crooked. They suspected kickbacks, but Judge Voss had not taken the bait. He had not assigned a specific bondsman. Instead, he had done something worse. He had revealed a bias so profound, so hateful, that the entire focus of the operation was about to shift. In the FBI van parked 2 blocks away, his team listened. He set bail at $100,000 for resisting, Agent Reyes whispered, staring at the audio levels. He is not just biased, he is proud of it, said Agent Morales, the team lead. But we do not have enough. A racist judge setting high bail is not a federal crime. It is just Tuesday in America. Corbin will stay in, Reyes said. He will process him through intake. No, Morales said, a grim look on his face. This judge is arrogant. Let us see how arrogant. Let us post the bond. We will use a shell company. Let us see what Voss does when this transient walks free. The plan was set. They would pay the bondsman a premium, and Corbin would be out. But in his chambers, Judge Voss was stewing. He pulled up the file for Devin Stone. He stared at the man's impassive mugshot. 100 grand. He knew the man could not pay it. He would sit in county just waiting for a trial. Then he would be so desperate he would take a plea. That is how the system worked. That is how he made it work. He buzzed his clerk. "Get me ADA Langford on the phone." When the prosecutor picked up, Voss did not waste time. "Langford, that Stone case. The resisting charge is flimsy. Kane's partner is waffling. I want you to find something better. I want this one to stick." "Judge," Langford sighed, "I cannot just invent a charge." "I am not asking you to invent it," Voss said, his voice dropping to a silken, dangerous tone. "I am asking you to find it. This man assaulted an officer. He is a menace. Do your job." He hung up. He looked at the mugshot again. "You will not look at me like that in my courtroom," he whispered to the photo. "I will make you pay." The next morning, Judge Voss arrived at the courthouse to find a message on his desk. Devin Stone had posted bond. Voss stared at the note from the bail bondsman. He had never heard of them. He threw the note in the trash. The man had walked 100,000 just like that. The judge's face purpled. He felt defied. This Devin Stone was not who he seemed. He was connected. He was, in Voss's twisted worldview, an organized, high-level criminal, the kind he really hated, the kind who thought they were smarter than him. He slammed his office door. The thick oak rattled in its frame. He buzzed his intercom. "Harlan, my chambers, now." Deputy Bailiff Henry Harlan did not just work for the courthouse. He worked for Judge Voss. They had come up together. Harlan, the failed cop. Voss, the ambitious prosecutor. Harlan had been Voss's fixer for years, a blunt instrument for a man who considered himself a surgeon. Harlan entered, his bulldog face set in its usual sour expression. "Problem, Judge." "The Stone case," Voss said, pacing. He posted bond. Harlan grunted, "Rich for a bum." "He is not a bum," Voss spat. "He is something else, and I am not letting him walk. The assault charge is going to fall apart. Kane's partner is recanting," says Kane, tripped. "He is a coward." Harlan stood silently. He knew what this prelude meant. "We need something that sticks," Voss said, stopping his pacing. He walked to a locked filing cabinet in the corner, one that did not match the rest of his office furniture. He opened it with a small private key. Inside were not files. Inside were dozens of small plastic evidence bags. Some contained syringes, others small glass vials, and many held baggies of white powder. It was a dragon's hoard of confiscated, lost, and mishandled evidence from years of cases, his insurance for difficult situations. He pulled out a small bag containing cocaine. This was from a case that was tossed on a technicality. The evidence was supposed to be destroyed. Harlan's eyes lit up with a sick understanding. "You want to. The defendant's property bag is still in courthouse holding," Voss said, his voice a low hiss. "His personal effects, his wallet, his keys, his phone. They are all in a locker downstairs." "You want me to drop this in his bag?" Harlan stated. It was not a question. "I want you to find this in his bag," Voss corrected him, his eyes like ice. "You were doing a routine inventory of the holding lockers, and you noticed a pungent odor. You opened the bag to verify the contents against the manifest, and this poison fell out." Harlan nodded, a slow, greasy smile spreading across his face. "A pungent odor. Got it. But Judge, the booking officers searched him. They inventoried his stuff. Their report will say the bag was clean. The booking officers are lazy," Voss said dismissively. "They missed it. It was tucked in a lining. A simple mistake. Your diligent recheck is what caught it. You are a hero, Harlan. You stopped a major trafficker." He handed the baggie to Harlan. Harlan palmed it, his thick fingers closing around the plastic. "And Stone," he bonded out. "He is probably on his way to the courthouse right now to pick up his effects. When he arrives, he will not be picking up his property. He will be getting a new set of bracelets. And this time, there will be no bail. And the public defender, Fletcher, she will scream. Let her scream," Voss sneered. "It is her word against a decorated bailiff and a sitting judge. I will deny the motion to suppress from the bench. I will fast-track the trial. Mr. Stone will be an inmate at the state penitentiary where he belongs." Harlan nodded. "I will take care of it." He left the chambers. Judge Voss sat back in his chair, straightening his robes. He felt the familiar, satisfying click of the world reordering itself to his liking. Justice, he thought, was about maintaining order, and he was the only one with the strength to do it. Down in the property room, Harlan moved with practiced ease. He had the keys. He knew the camera blind spots. He found the locker marked Stone D. He opened the sealed paper bag containing Devon's belongings. Inside were a cheap wallet, a single key, a pack of gum, and a pair of dark sunglasses. Harlan sneered. He unzipped the inner lining of the paper-thin windbreaker Devon had been wearing, shoved the baggie deep inside, and zipped it back up. He then resealed the main property bag. He walked to the clerk's window. "I am doing a spot check on holding property. That Stone file, pull it." Devon Stone walked into the courthouse, dressed in the civilian clothes his team had stashed for him. He approached the property window. "Here to collect for Devon Stone," he said. The clerk, a young woman, looked up. Then her eyes went wide. "Oh, sir, could you wait right here?" Devon felt the shift instantly. The air was charged. From the side door, Deputy Harlan emerged, flanked by 2 sheriff's deputies. "Devon Stone," Harlan barked. "That is me. You are under arrest." "For what?" Devon asked, keeping his voice level. "I am out on bond. For trafficking narcotics," Harlan said, pulling out a new set of cuffs. He held up the bag of cocaine. "We found this in your property." "Slick. Looks like you are not just a cop beater. You are a poison peddler." Devon looked at the bag. He looked at Harlan, and then he looked up directly at the security camera in the corner. A camera he knew Harlan thought was a blind spot. He slowly, deliberately put his hands behind his back. "I see," he said. "You are going to want to get the judge. I think he will want to be here for this." Harlan laughed. "Oh, he knows. He is the one who told us to be on the lookout for trash like you." As the cuffs clicked shut, Devon's FBI handlers in the van were watching a different feed, not the courthouse camera. They were watching the live feed from the pinhole camera hidden in Devon's sunglasses, which was sitting right inside the secured property bag. They had a perfect high-definition audio and video recording of Deputy Harlan's hands unzipping the bag, planting the drugs, and resealing it. In the van, Agent Reyes hit the record button a second time, saving the file. "Oh my God," she whispered. "He did it." The judge's own bailiff planted evidence on a federal agent. Agent Morales was not celebrating. His face was granite. "Get the Assistant United States Attorney on the phone now. Tell him Operation Gavel is dead. This is Operation Trojan Horse, and we are in." The news of the second arrest hit Naomi Fletcher like a physical blow. She found Devon back in the courthouse holding cell, already in a fresh orange jumpsuit. "They say you had cocaine in your property bag," she said, her voice trembling with disbelief. "Devon, please tell me this is a mistake." "It is a mistake," Devon said, his voice calm. "But it is not the one you think. It is a plant, Naomi." "A plant? Who?" "The booking officers. Think about it," Devon said, steering her. "Who has access? Who has motive? Who was so angry I made bail that he would risk everything to keep me in?" Naomi's blood ran cold. "Judge Voss. He is the head," Devon said, "but he would have a hand." "Who brought me in?" "Deputy Harlan," Naomi breathed. "He was the one who announced the find." "Oh, God." "I want a suppression hearing," Devon said. "I want it fast. And I want Harlan on the stand. I want Voss presiding." "Devon, that is suicide," Naomi protested. "If Voss is in on it, he will just deny the motion. He will bury us. We need to file for a new judge, a change of venue." "No," Devon said, his tone final. "I want him. I want him to rule on this. I want him to sit on that bench and listen to the lies he orchestrated. Can you do it?" Naomi looked at the man in front of her. He was not scared. He was angry. It was a cold, controlled fury she had never seen before. It scared her, but it also emboldened her. A suppression hearing? She nodded, her own resolve hardening. "I will file the motion. I will cite an impossible chain of custody. They will have to respond." "Good," Devon said. "And Naomi, do not worry about the trial. Just focus on this hearing. Focus on Deputy Harlan and watch the judge. Watch every single move he makes." Courtroom 3B was packed. Word had gotten out. The high-bail cop beater was now a high-level drug trafficker. The local news had sent a sketch artist. Judge Voss took the bench, his face a mask of solemnity. "We are here for a motion to suppress in the case of the people versus Devon Stone. Miss Fletcher, you may proceed." Naomi stood, her hands shaking but her voice clear. "Your Honor, The defense moves to suppress all evidence, namely a bag of narcotics found in my client's property bag. The discovery of this contraband is a legal and logistical impossibility. Mr. Stone was searched by 2 booking officers. His property was inventoried and sealed. This discovery by Deputy Harlan hours later in a secure area is a clear violation of chain of custody protocols and reeks of prosecutorial misconduct. ADA Langford stood up red-faced. "Objection! She is accusing an officer of the court." "I am accusing no one," Naomi cut him off, her voice ringing with newfound confidence. "I am stating facts, and to clarify those facts, the defense calls Deputy Henry Harlan to the stand." A ripple went through the courtroom. "You could not just call a bailiff in the same court." Voss glared at Naomi. "This is highly irregular, counselor. These are irregular circumstances, Your Honor," Naomi countered. "Unless the prosecution wishes to stipulate to the facts of the discovery and risk having the evidence tossed on procedure alone." Langford and Voss were cornered. "Fine," Voss snapped. "Mr. Harlan, take the stand." Harlan, looking uncomfortable in a suit instead of his uniform, was sworn in. Naomi approached the witness box. "Deputy Harlan, please describe to the court the events leading to the second arrest of my client." Harlan recited the story Voss had fed him. "I was conducting a routine inventory of the property lockers. I came to the locker assigned to the defendant. I noted a pungent chemical odor." "A pungent odor?" Naomi asked. "From a sealed bag of cocaine inside a sealed property bag inside a locked steel locker." Harlan flinched. "It was strong, so strong that no one else smelled it, not the 2 booking officers who stood inches from the property, not the property clerk." "I am just telling you what I smelled," Harlan said, his voice rising. "And what did you do?" "I followed procedure. I opened the locker and the property bag to verify the contents against the manifest. I discovered the narcotics tucked into the lining of the defendant's jacket." "You opened a sealed evidence bag." "Property bag," Harlan corrected. "A bag sealed by another officer without a warrant, without a witness." "I do not need a warrant," Harlan yelled, looking to Voss for help. "It is courthouse property." "That is enough, counselor," Voss interrupted, his voice a low growl. "You are badgering the witness. I am trying to understand how evidence magically appears in a secure locker." "Your Honor," Naomi shot back. "Are you accusing my bailiff of planting evidence, Miss Fletcher?" Voss asked, his voice deadly. Naomi felt her blood freeze. This was it, the moment of truth. She looked at Harlan, sweating in the stand. She looked at Voss, a predator on his throne. She looked at Devon, who nodded at her just once. "What I am saying, Your Honor," Naomi said, turning to face the judge directly, "is that the chain of custody is irreparably broken. The testimony of this witness is self-serving and defies logic. There is no way this evidence can be admissible in a court of law. It is fruit of the poisonous tree, and the tree itself appears to be rooted right here in this courthouse." A collective gasp went through the gallery. Judge Voss's face was no longer just purple. It was a mask of pure, unadulterated rage. He stood up, towering over the court. "This hearing is over," he roared. "Miss Fletcher, I am finding you in contempt. 10 days in the county lockup." "Your Honor," ADA Langford yelped, shocked. "And as for this motion," Voss spat, "it is denied wholly and completely. I find Deputy Harlan's testimony to be credible, and I find your behavior, counselor, to be despicable. The evidence stands. Mr. Stone will be tried to the full extent of the law." He looked at Devon, a triumphant, hateful sneer on his face. "You should have taken the plea, son. Now you are facing 20 years. He banged his gavel. Court adjourned. "Deputies, take Miss Fletcher into custody." 2 officers moved toward a stunned Naomi. Harlan was stepping down from the stand, a smug grin on his face. Devon Stone simply watched. He looked at his shaking, terrified public defender being grabbed. He looked at the smug bailiff. He looked at the triumphant racist judge. And in the van, Agent Morales turned to the lead assistant United States attorney, who had been listening to the entire feed. "Now?" Morales asked. The assistant United States attorney, a man known for his icy calm, was visibly shaking with anger. "Oh yes, now." The moment Judge Voss's gavel struck, the main doors of courtroom 3B burst open. It was not a tentative push. The heavy oak doors slammed against the walls, the sound cracking through the stunned silence like thunder. 3 men in dark blue suits with United States Marshals emblazoned in yellow on their tactical vests entered first. They fanned out, creating a perimeter. They were followed by 3 more people: Agent Morales, Agent Reyes, and Assistant United States Attorney Mark Sandler. "What is the meaning of this?" Voss bellowed from the bench, though the color was draining from his face. "This is my courtroom." "Not anymore," Sandler said, his voice cutting through the air. He walked directly to the center of the room, holding up a file. "Harlan Voss, this proceeding is concluded. This courtroom is now a federal crime scene." "Insolence!" Voss roared, though his voice wavered. "Deputies, arrest these men for disrupting a court proceeding." The 2 deputies holding Naomi Fletcher's arms looked at the United States Marshals, then at Voss, then back at the Marshals. They froze, letting Naomi go. Deputy Harlan, who had been halfway to the door, made a break for it. "Henry Harlan!" Agent Morales barked, his voice the command of a man who does not get argued with. One of the marshals, moving with impossible speed, cut Harlan off, spun him around, and slammed him against the wall. "You cannot do this," Harlan shrieked, his face pressed to the plaster. "Yes, we can," Agent Reyes said, pulling out her own cuffs. "Henry Harlan, you are under arrest for conspiracy to violate civil rights, possession with intent to distribute, and perjury." The courtroom exploded. The gallery was in chaos. The reporter was sketching furiously. Voss was on his feet, his face a mottled, terrified white. "This is a travesty, a joke. On what grounds? On whose authority?" "On my authority," Sandler said, stepping up to the bar, "and on the authority of the United States Department of Justice." He looked at the marshals. "Take him." 2 marshals began to ascend the steps to the bench. "No!" Voss shrieked, backing away. "You cannot. I am a judge. I am the law." "You are a judge," Sandler said. "Now you are a defendant. And as for the evidence," he gestured to the holding cell. A marshal unlocked the door. Devin Stone walked out. He was not in an orange jumpsuit. He was not cuffed. He walked calmly to the center of the courtroom, brushing a piece of lint from his sleeve. Judge Voss stared at him, his mouth opening and closing. You. Devin looked up at the man who had tried to destroy him. Me. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his credentials. He flipped the leather wallet open. "Special Agent Corbin Hale," he said, his voice clear and resonant, filling every corner of the room. "FBI, Operation Trojan Horse." Naomi Fletcher, now standing beside ADA Langford, put her hand over her mouth. "Oh my God." "The evidence," Corbin continued, his eyes locked on Voss. "It is all right here. The initial approach, the absurd bail hearing, your illegal order to ADA Langford to find something on me. It is all on audio." "Audio," Voss whispered, sinking into his high-backed chair. "But you," Corbin said, pointing at Harlan, who was now weeping as the marshal cuffed him. "You were the real prize. You and your boss." He turned back to Voss. "You see, Judge, when you have a target, you put surveillance on them. Or, if you're smart, you get them to put surveillance in their own secure room." Corbin looked at Agent Reyes. "Agent, the display." Reyes nodded to a tech by the door, who wheeled in a large monitor. She plugged in a laptop. "This," Corbin announced to the courtroom, "is from a high-definition audio-visual pinhole camera. The one that was in my sunglasses. The sunglasses that were in my property bag." Reyes hit play. The courtroom watched in horrified silence as the monitor played a first-person view from inside the property bag. They saw the bag unzip. They saw Deputy Harlan's thick fingers. They heard his grunts. And they saw in perfect, undeniable clarity as he pulled the baggie of cocaine from his own pocket and shoved it into the lining of the jacket. A woman in the gallery screamed. Ada Langford looked like he was going to be sick. "That is a fake," Voss stammered. "That is CGI. It is a deep fake. It has been verified by the FBI Forensics Lab," Judge Assistant United States Attorney Sandler said. "And it is corroborated by the audio from your chambers. The audio where you gave him the drugs. The drugs from the Morales case." Voss stopped speaking. The fight was gone. He looked old and small and pathetic, a deflated costume in a judge's robe. "Harlan Voss," Sandler said, reading from the warrant. "You are under arrest for conspiracy, fabrication of evidence, violation of Title 18 United States Code Section 242, the deprivation of rights under color of law, and a dozen other charges we will be adding by the end of the day." The marshals did not wait. They took him, one on each arm, and pulled him from his chair. The man who had been a king just moments before was now a prisoner. "You cannot. He whimpered as they pulled his arms behind his back. "I am a judge." "You are a disgrace," Corbin Hale said, his voice quiet. As Voss was led out, his eyes met Corbin's. The hatred in them was still there, but now it was diluted by pure, abject terror. Corbin turned to Naomi Fletcher, who was staring at him, wide-eyed. "You are an FBI agent," she stammered. "Yes, Naomi," Corbin said. "And you let him find me in contempt? You were going to let them take me to jail." Corbin's expression softened. "My team was in the hall, Miss Fletcher. Those deputies would have never gotten you past the doors, but I needed you to do what you did. I needed you to fight. You are a hell of a lawyer." He turned to Assistant United States Attorney Sandler. "This courtroom is secure. Let us start processing the files. I have a feeling Judge Voss's insurance cabinet is just the beginning." The arrest of a sitting judge is not a quiet affair. The fall of Judge Harlan Voss was an explosion. The FBI and the United States Attorney's Office did not just arrest Voss and Harlan. They seized years' worth of records from the Davidson County Courthouse. The insurance cabinet in Voss's chambers was a treasure trove of corruption. It turned out Voss was not just planting evidence on people he did not like. He was running a massive extortion racket. He would target defendants he knew had some money, small business owners, middle-class families. He would have Harlan or another corrupt deputy plant minor contraband. Then Voss's preferred and crooked defense attorney, a man named Lawrence Beck, would approach the family. "Judge Voss is a hard man," Beck would say, "but I can make this go away for a price." The money would be paid, and Beck and Voss would split it. The charges would be miraculously dropped on a technicality. The Devon Stone case was different. It was not about money. It was about hate. Voss saw a black man who defied him, and he skipped the extortion part and went straight to destruction. It was this act of pure, unadulterated racism that proved to be his undoing. Deputy Harlan, facing years in federal prison, began to sing. He sang a song of years of corruption, bribes, and planted evidence. He gave up names, dates, and cases. He implicated Lawrence Beck. He implicated two other deputies. He implicated A.D.A. Langford, not as a co-conspirator, but as a man who knew when to look away, which was a crime in itself. Langford was disbarred. The biggest bombshell Harlan dropped, however, was about the resisting arrest charge that started it all. Officer Kane, the cop who claimed Devon broke his hand, was Voss's nephew. The entire fitting a description stop, the escalation, the assault. It was a setup from the word go. Voss had been using his nephew as a street-level enforcer, targeting people in neighborhoods he wanted to cleanse for his developer friends. The FBI had started by pulling a thread and had unraveled the entire rotten tapestry of the county's legal system. Naomi Fletcher was for a time overwhelmed. The young, idealistic public defender had been a pawn in a game she could not even see. But when Assistant United States Attorney Mark Sandler offered her a job in the United States Attorney's Office, assigned specifically to the Voss case review, she took it. She was not a pawn anymore. She was a queen, and she was furious. She became the lead investigator in charge of reviewing every single one of Voss's convictions. It was a Herculean task, and it was heartbreaking. She found file after file of men, mostly black and Latino, who had been railroaded, who had taken deals of a lifetime, pleas for years to avoid longer sentences on planted evidence. The media circus was relentless. "The judge of shame," one headline screamed. "Voss's lair, cocaine, and corruption," read another. The trial of Harlan Voss was swift. It was not a trial. It was a formality. With the video from Corbin's sunglasses, the audio from his chambers, and the testimony of Henry Harlan, the defense had nothing to offer. Voss, stripped of his power, his robes, and his dignity, sat in a suit that was now too large for him. He had aged years. His arrogance was gone, replaced by a trembling, pallid fear. He tried one last time. He took the stand in his own defense, claiming he was set up, that the deep state FBI had framed him. On cross-examination, Assistant United States Attorney Sandler let him talk, digging his own grave. Then Sandler simply walked to the monitor and played the video from Corbin's sunglasses again. Special Agent Hale's sunglasses, Mr. Voss, were they part of the deep state? Was the pinhole camera a political operative? Voss's defense rested. The jury was out briefly, guilty on all counts. The sentencing hearing was set. The federal courthouse, a modern glass and steel building, was chosen specifically to break from the dark wood and corruption of Voss's old domain. The sentencing judge assigned to the case was a surprise to no one: Chief Judge Harriet Grant. Judge Grant was a legend, a black woman who had started her career as a civil rights lawyer in the Deep South. She had faced men like Voss her entire life. She was known for her brilliant legal mind and her absolute intolerance for injustice. Voss was wheeled into the courtroom in a wheelchair. His lawyers claimed he was too ill to stand. Judge Grant watched him, her face impassive. The prosecution, led by Sandler and assisted by Naomi Fletcher, asked for the maximum. Mr. Voss, Naomi said, making the closing statement for the prosecution, did not just break the law. He was the law, and he twisted it, poisoned it, and used it as a weapon against the very people he swore an oath to protect. He built a kingdom of lies, and he populated his dungeons with the poor, the marginalized, and the people whose skin color he did not approve of. He is not just a criminal, he is a walking, breathing constitutional crisis. Then it was Voss's turn to speak. His lawyer, a court-appointed federal defender, stood. My client, Harlan Voss, is a broken man. He is old. He has a heart condition. A life sentence is a death sentence. We ask for mercy for the time he has already served. The courtroom was silent. Judge Grant looked at Voss. Mr. Voss, do you have anything to say for yourself? The old, frail man looked up. His eyes were watering. I made mistakes, he whispered. I lost my way. I let the pressures, the animals, I let them get to me. I just wanted to clean up the streets. I did what I thought was right. Judge Grant listened. Then she took a sip of water. She set the glass down and she began. Mr. Voss, she said, her voice quiet, but carrying the weight of generations. You come in here in a wheelchair you do not need, and you speak of mistakes. A mistake is when you dial a wrong number. A mistake is when you spill your coffee. You did not make mistakes. You made choices. You chose to pervert the sacred trust this nation placed in you. You chose to wield your power not as a shield for the innocent, but as a sword against the vulnerable. You speak of animals. The only animal I see in this courtroom is the one that devours hope, the one that shreds the Constitution, the one that preys on the weak. And that animal, sir, is you. Voss visibly recoiled. You did not just lose your way, Judge Grant continued, her voice rising, not in volume, but in power. You bulldozed a new path paved with the lives of the men you framed. You sat on that bench wrapped in a robe that men and women far better than you have worn with honor, and you turned it into a shroud. You framed an undercover federal agent. You were so blinded by your own bigotry, so assured in your own power that you did not just commit a crime, you committed a stupid crime. You were a dragon, and you were brought down by a man you considered a fly. She looked at her papers. You asked for mercy, the very thing you denied every single man and woman who stood before you. You speak of your heart condition. What of the heart of a mother whose son you sent away for years for a baggie you put in his pocket? What of the heart of a community that you taught to fear the one building that is supposed to be their last refuge? The video of you, she said, in your chambers handing that bag of cocaine to your lackey. That video will be shown in law schools for years as a definition of deprivation of rights under color of law. I am sentencing you, Harlan Voss, to the maximum allowable under the guidelines for every single count to be served consecutively. You will leave this courtroom and you will be transferred to a federal supermax facility. You will not be given a private cell. You will be in the general population. You will wear a number. You will die in prison. And when you do, the only justice this court will recognize is the closing of your file. We are done here. She banged the gavel. It was the crack of a whip. As the marshals lifted the now sobbing Voss from his wheelchair and dragged him from the court, Special Agent Corbin Hale, watching from the back row, allowed himself a small, grim smile. The fall of Harlan Voss was not a single event. It was a detonation. The shrapnel from his ruined kingdom tore through the state's legal system, and the shockwave would be felt for years. His sentencing by Judge Harriet Grant was the end of his story. A final pathetic whimper as he was wheeled sobbing into a transport van. But for the hundreds of men and women he had crushed under his gavel, it was a beginning. The hard, slow, agonizing work of justice had only just started. The first ripple began with a man named Robert Hayes. Robbie Hayes had been an inmate for years. He was arrested at a young age for possession with intent to distribute, a charge he never understood. He was a line cook, had never touched the stuff, but he had been pulled over by Officer Kane for erratic driving, and a search of his trunk, conducted while he was cuffed on the sidewalk, produced a brick of heroin. His public defender, terrified of Judge Voss, advised him to plead. "He is offering a deal," the lawyer had said. "If you go to trial, he will give you longer." Robbie, facing a lifetime, took the deal. His daughter was young. He had never seen her walk, never heard her first words. Naomi Fletcher, now working as a special investigator for the United States Attorney's Task Force, found his file. It was buried in Voss's insurance cabinet in a folder labeled Kane's Triumphs. Attached to the police report was a small, handwritten note in Voss's spidery script. "This one will set an example for the Mill Creek crowd. LB owes me one. LB, Lawrence Beck, Voss's crooked lawyer." It was not just a plant. It was a conspiracy to frame a random citizen to settle a favor. Naomi flew to the state penitentiary. She met Robbie in a gray cinder block room that smelled of boiled vegetables and despair. He looked older, his eyes dead. "Mr. Hayes," she said, her voice shaking slightly, "my name is Naomi Fletcher. I am with the United States Attorney's Office. I am reviewing convictions made by Judge Harlan Voss." "Voss," Robbie spat the name. "Yeah, I remember him. He is the one who sent me here. What is it to you? You want to add more time?" "Judge Voss has been arrested," Naomi said gently. "He has been convicted on dozens of counts, including fabricating evidence. We have reason to believe your case was one of them." Robbie stared at her. He did not move. "Do not," he whispered. "Do not you come in here with that. Hope is a sharp thing in a place like this. You do not play with it." "I am not playing," Naomi said. She slid the note across the table. "This one will set an example." Robbie read it. His hands, scarred from prison laundry work, began to tremble. He looked up, and for the first time in years, his eyes focused. A single hot tear traced a path through the grime on his cheek. "We are filing an emergency motion to vacate," Naomi said. "It is being heard. I just needed to tell you in person." The next day, Robbie Hayes, in a loose-fitting suit the prison kept for court appearances, stood before a new judge, a federal judge. Naomi Fletcher presented the note. She presented Henry Harlan's sworn testimony about how Voss's insurance stash worked. She presented the evidence that Officer Kane had been Voss's street-level enforcer. The judge, a no-nonsense woman, read the file, her face growing darker with every page. She looked at the state prosecutor. "Do you have any argument as to why I should not grant this motion, counselor?" The prosecutor stood. "No, Your Honor. The state has no objection. We apologize." The judge banged her gavel. "The conviction of Robert Hayes is hereby vacated with prejudice. This man's record is to be expunged. He is to be released from custody immediately. Mr. Hayes, you are a free man." Robbie's knees buckled. He fell into his chair, not making a sound, just shaking. Naomi put her hand on his shoulder. "It is over, Robbie. It is over." He was the first. He was not the last. The Gavel Project was born that day in the hallway outside the courtroom when Robbie's daughter, a stranger to him, ran into his arms. Naomi Fletcher watched them, weeping, and made a vow. She would find every last one of them. She resigned from the United States Attorney's Task Force and, using seed money from a legal defense fund, opened a nonprofit in a cramped two-room office, its sole mission to find and free the victims of Judge Harlan Voss. While Naomi was building a new world, the old one was burning. The hard karma of the law moves slower than a prison shank, but it cuts just as deep. Henry Harlan, Voss's brutal fixer, learned this firsthand. Stripped of his uniform and his power, he was just another inmate at the federal holding facility awaiting transfer. He was loud, arrogant, and stupid. He tried to bully other inmates, tried to throw his bailiff weight around. It ended in the prison common room over a game of cards. Harlan accused another inmate of cheating. Words were exchanged. Harlan, used to being the toughest man in the room, shoved the inmate. The man, a lifer with nothing to lose, simply stood up, pulled a sharpened piece of metal from his waistband, and said nothing. He drove it into Harlan's neck, severing his carotid artery. Henry Harlan, the man who had gleefully planted evidence to destroy lives, bled out on a sticky linoleum floor, choking on his own blood. His last sight, the bored, impassive faces of men watching a broken television. His end was as meaningless and brutal as his life had been. Officer Kane, Voss's nephew, fared little better. He was tried separately. His partner, the one who Voss had called a coward, was the star witness. He testified that Kane had bragged about Voss taking care of the resisting arrest charge. He testified that Kane had intentionally and maliciously tripped, then screamed his hand was broken, all as part of a practiced routine. Kane was convicted of perjury and assault under color of law. The judge, an old-school conservative who despised dirty cops, gave him the maximum. The last anyone saw of Kane, he was in a drab state-issue blue uniform mopping the floor of a prison mess hall. An older inmate accidentally kicked over his bucket, splashing gray water all over the floor. "Clean it up, pig," the inmate sneered, and Kane, weeping, did. The most humiliating fate was reserved for Lawrence Beck, the crooked attorney. He was not a criminal, not in a way the FBI could pin. His name was on no notes, but he was an unethical lawyer. The State Bar Association, in the wake of the Voss scandal, launched its own investigation. They found a pattern of dozens of cases where Beck had taken on a client only to advise them to plead to a deal Voss had prearranged. He was, in effect, a sheepdog, herding his own clients to the slaughter for a kickback. His disbarment hearing was a quiet, sterile affair. No grand jury, no dramatic speeches, just 3 aging lawyers on an ethics board. "Mr. Beck," the chairman said, "you have violated the most sacred trust between a lawyer and a client. You are not his shield. You are the judge's knife. This board finds that you are unfit to practice law in this or any other state. You are hereby disbarred. Your license is revoked, effective immediately." Beck, who had built a life of luxury on the backs of framed men, was ruined. His firm collapsed. His partners sued him. His wife left him. He lost his house, his car, his membership at the golf club. Months later, a man pulled his Mercedes into a downtown parking garage during a rainstorm. An attendant in a cheap yellow slicker, his face gaunt and unshaven, limped over. "Ticket, sir?" the attendant asked, his voice a whisper. The driver looked at him. "Hey, do not I know you? You are Lawrence Beck, are you not?" Lawrence Beck just stared, the rain dripping from his nose. "That will be $10 for the first hour, sir," he said, holding out a trembling hand. The city of Davidson itself was hemorrhaging. The Gavel Project, in partnership with several major civil rights firms, filed a class action lawsuit on behalf of the men and women who had been wrongfully convicted by Voss. The number of lives he had destroyed was staggering, an average of years served per person. That was thousands of years of life stolen. The city council held an emergency meeting. The city attorney, a woman named Chen, stood before them, her face ashen. "We cannot fight this," she said. "The evidence is absolute. Voss kept records of his crimes. We are liable. The plaintiff's initial settlement demand is hundreds of millions." The mayor choked. "We do not have our entire city budget." "Then I suggest you find it," Chen said, "because if we go to trial, a jury will award them double that." The city was forced to declare bankruptcy. City services were slashed. Pensions were cut. The backlash was immediate and furious. The mayor was recalled. The chief of police was fired. The entire judicial system of the county was dissolved and put into receivership. As a final symbolic act, the Davidson County Courthouse was stripped of its name. It was renamed the Harriet Grant Justice Center after the judge who had finally brought the gavel down on Voss. And Courtroom 3B, it was gutted. A construction crew was brought in. They tore out the judge's bench with crowbars, the dark wood splintering. They ripped up the carpet stained with who knows what. They tore the seal of the state off the wall. The room where so many lives had been destroyed was brick by brick unmade. It was rebuilt as the courthouse's new public law library. The first book placed on the shelf was a copy of the United States Constitution. In an office building 2 blocks away, the Gavel Project was a hive of activity. The walls were covered with photos, not mugshots, but real photos. Men at barbecues, women holding their grandchildren. Robbie Hayes, now a case manager, was on the phone walking a newly released man through how to get a driver's license. The door opened and Corbin Hale walked in. He was in a simple polo shirt and jeans, looking more like a civilian than Naomi had ever seen him. "Agent Hale." Naomi smiled, standing up from her desk, which was overflowing with files. "Or should I call you Section Chief Hale? I heard about the promotion." "I turned it down," Corbin said, taking the cup of coffee she offered. "Desk job. Not for me." Somehow, I am not surprised, she laughed. They stood for a moment, just listening to the sound of the office, phones ringing, a man laughing, the clack of a keyboard. It was the sound of lives being rebuilt. "You know," Naomi said, her voice quiet, "I still have nightmares about that courtroom, about him finding me in contempt, that feeling of absolute powerlessness." "He was a monster," Corbin said, "but monsters only have power when they live in the dark. We just turned on the lights. That video," Naomi mused, looking out the window, "that little camera in your sunglasses, it was the smallest thing. It is almost absurd. All these lives, this whole city changed because of a tiny piece of plastic." Corbin looked at the wall of photos. He saw Robbie Hayes coaching his daughter's soccer team. "It is always the small things, Naomi," Corbin said. "The small acts of defiance, the small, quiet voices that say no. The one person who decides to fight. That is what changes the world." He finished his coffee and placed the empty cup on her desk. "You have done a good thing here, counselor." "We are just getting started," she said, her eyes shining with a fire he remembered from the suppression hearing. "But are you just here to say hello?" "No," Corbin said, his expression shifting, becoming focused. "I have to go. I am due in court." Naomi frowned. "Another case here?" "No. Different city. Same story," he said, walking to the door. "Undercover?" she asked, a note of concern in her voice. Corbin Hale stopped at the door and looked back, a small grim smile on his face. Just a man walking home from the bus stop. He walked out into the city, a city that was healing, a city that was learning to trust the law again, and disappeared into the crowd. Just another face. But he was a guardian. He was the man who walked into the dark carrying his own small, unblinking light. What you just heard was a story, but the themes are real. Every day, people are fighting against systems of hate and corruption. The actions of one racist judge like Harlan Voss can destroy hundreds of lives, but the actions of one brave agent and one dedicated lawyer can bring that whole rotten structure crashing down. Justice is not automatic. It has to be fought for. If this story moved you, please hit that like button. It tells the algorithm that these stories of justice matter. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. And most importantly, subscribe to the channel. We have so many more stories to tell.